Hello, everyone, and welcome to today's virtual gathering as part of our effort at Conscious Capitalism to continue to make conscious capitalism relevant to your everyday practice. Today, we have a session on preparing for the recession, which is also in part about how do you deal with the uncertainty that we're facing today. And joining me are two longtime supporters and exemplar leaders in the conscious capitalism movement, Al Lazowski and Ben Richter. Al, Ben, welcome.
Thank you,
Thank you.
Timothy.
Brief background on Alan. Alan co-founded LAZ Parking in 1981 while attending the University of Connecticut. Ask him about his days as a valet and how he's parlayed that into LAZ Parking, which has grown into the largest privately held parking management, transportation, and mobility company in the country, with managed revenue in excess of $1.8 billion and over 12,000 employees. Al, welcome.
Thank you, Timothy. It's an honor to be here.
And Ben is the founder and chairman of the Bradford Airport Logistics and Bradford Swissport Logistics Company. Brad is both the US and global leader in secure airport terminal logistics, which basically means, each airport is a little village, and every day you got to feed the village, you got to supply the village. Ben's company works on getting things from the outside to the inside, doing it in a secure and predictable way. The company's earned reputation for innovation and operational excellence. At the center of the company's offering is a proprietary world-class in-house developed logistics technology infrastructure, affectionately known to all who know it as the Airport Material Intelligence System. Thank you, Ben, for joining us today.
You're quite welcome.
Super. Well, the issue that we want to start with today is we've been through periods of uncertainty, deep uncertainty, and potential disruption before. And we think that there's a really important way in which conscious businesses begin to think and then act in these times. And so I'd love to begin with each of you perhaps telling a quick story about COVID and how that impacted your business and how you reacted to that. Al, if I could, I'd love to start with you. COVID comes along, you're in the parking business. Suddenly, what happens?
Great. Well, Timothy, I just want to start by thank you for your tremendous leadership in being the CEO of Conscious Capitalism, because I know that our group is much better with you as a leader at the helm, and we're doing great things. So thank you very much. Just a little history. I had the honor of starting LAZ Parking with my childhood best friends from 9 years old and 12 years old, with a $3,000 loan from my grandfather 44 years ago in Hartford, Connecticut, with a single restaurant location. And I'm honored to say that 44 years later, we're still best friends and partners, which is just a real gift in and of itself to live in that environment with my best friends in business for all those years. And we're now actually close to 20,000 LAZ employees and over 2 million parking spaces that we own, lease, or manage. But we all, experience ups and downs in business and life. And during COVID, it was one of our big challenges. We actually experienced something earlier in our careers in 89, 90, 91, when there was a big real estate crash. But during COVID, all of a sudden, on March 11th, our business went down 95% overnight. Our transient business, no one was going to offices, no one was traveling, no one was, if you remember, going to any events. So imagine a world where we had, at that time, over 3,300 locations, and 95% of that business is done. We had to furlough 7,800 people. We never furloughed one employee in 40 years of business at the time. And we all worked together. It felt like around the clock, 24/7, to figure things out. And I think there was a lot of silver lining in a conscious capitalist way that helped us get through that. And I know that because of our long-term relationships with our landlords and our clients and our friends and our vendor partners, we all banded together to help each other. And I had landlords come to me, even without us even asking, saying, hey, don't worry about that lease payment. We made a deal with our bank. We have 6 months. We'll put it on the back end. And we all worked together to figure things out. And it was a beautiful moment. And, you know, it's a really important moment because you learn through adversity, you gain strength, and you learn a rhythm of doing business and being creative to find different ways to get through. And that's what we experienced. And I'll just tell you one quick story that I love. We had just moved to a new corporate office, a building we bought in downtown Hartford, which is over 600,000 square feet. And we moved our home headquarters. And the moving company, this Syracuse Moving and Storage, who was a friend of mine for many years, did the move for us. And he wrote me this note and he said, you know, the bill was about 40,000. He said, you know, you've been doing so much for us over the years in our community that I'm waiving the moving bill. Now, this was a small company and they waived the $40,000 moving bill during COVID and said, it's time for us to take care of you. And I was so moved by that expression of love and friendship. And that's what conscious capitalists do in the time of need. And that's why I love conscious capitalism.
Al, thank you. That's a great story. Ben, you're in the airport business. And let me guess,
Yeah,
COVID happened and suddenly everybody's flying everywhere. Not. What happened, Ben?
yeah. Well, first of all, Tim, I want to echo how unbelievably grateful I am for your willingness to volunteer to take the tip of the spear leadership role in conscious capitalism. And I could not echo Al's sentiment more dearly around the competency, the culture, and the integrity that you bring to this important position as we continue to transform this organization. Thank you. And
Well,
Al, I want
you
you to
guys are
say
just wonderful. So thank you for those kind words. I
you're
hope I can
welcome.
earn them someday.
And Al, well, before I get to tell my story, I want to comment on Al. First of all, I have been prolifically for years a fan of this amazing organization, and I've watched it grow. But its growth was as predictable as the sun shining every day and the moon coming. You know, the cycle of where they originated from, and the deep culture of caring, of relationship. Um, you know, some of us become very intentional conscious capitalisms. It's as we begin to learn that some of these pillars have just existed in our DNA for a long time. If anyone really understood the history and the story of Al as a person and how he has come to be and what he appreciates, and then to understand the dynamics of the relationship of these great friends, and it is a rarity that those kind of things stay together in this unique way. But the output of people wanting to pay back, I suspect Al is 10 favors deep with every human being he touches. I place a bet on that. And a few times he needs help, you know, the outpouring of people he has touched in his life. It's part of what we do as leaders is create great legacies, and we don't do it alone. We share that great responsibility with others. And when you know how to do that in a unique, profound way, where stakeholder engagement is more than just a manipulation, it's leading with love. And Al, again, it's a pleasure to share a screen with you. And more importantly, I'm a
If
huge
we
fan.
were in, I wish I could come through the screen and just give you a big hug right now. And thank you.
I'm I'm
We
ready for
feel
it.
the
Well,
love. We feel the
hey,
love.
that technology is just around the corner, Al. We'll keep it clean. Listen, I want you to know, COVID for us, you know, when we lost 20% of passenger enplanements, that was a world shift. But when we went down to 96 50% loss in passenger enplanements. It was apocalyptical. It was something out of a biblical chapter somewhere. When the New Testament gets written, there'll be a chapter for this. But the bottom line is, airports, our constituency was just trying to fly under its revenue stream. And these were catastrophic changes. But I want to share not just the story of how we persevered the storm, but we didn't just survive, we thrived. But there was a reason for it. And it's not a braggadocious thing. It's something I want to share so that other leaders can take value from this time we spend together and actually develop a prescription for future. We still live in a pretty turbulent event. And I do want you to know, everyone kind of gets this feeling that things have never been worse. I want you to know things have always been worse. We're just in another stage and phase. And we need to maintain that relentless positivity through everything we do as leaders, number one. But there is a recipe we followed. Now, when this happened, we pulled, the first loss in passenger employment, we pulled the playbook out. And what do you do in a viral kind of thing, and we've had flus and we've had this, and we had a suspicion this might be a little different. And because of the veracity, the speed it was happening. But the one thing I will tell you is the first recipe in our 3 Cs, which is curiosity, communication, and commitment, is intense curiosity. This is different. The rules that govern how we operate are changing. This is not a time where you get passive or retreat into a defensive state. This is where you get intensively curious. It's like Louis Pasteur and staring at the penicillin vial. You want to kind of really, fortune favors the prepared mind, and this is the time to prepare. And the way we do that as entrepreneurs is with this intense fascination for, boy, I haven't seen this before. This could be a dynamic change. And for those who didn't practice that, I think there were some catastrophic results of this. We don't rise to occasions, we fall to our levels of preparation. And so you have to have this unique instinct to know now's the time to engage. And it doesn't mean you're doing something yet other than the second C, which is communicate where, everywhere. Your stakeholders depend on your leadership. And I want you to know it's not a one-man job. This is not a Ben did anything. But the years of preparation, like the years of Al's relationships with stakeholders, you didn't build that the day COVID came. That's not something you pull the playbook out and say, hey, can you help me? Can you do something on my lease? They were volunteering it because of years of practicing the pillars, years of building relationships of partnering. That you don't know the true colors of someone when you're waltzing down a downhill sunny road and everything is good. You find out somebody's true makeup when you are in a hailstorm and everything's blowing sideways. And you kind of know who you're with from all the other micro failures you went through them. And I got to tell you, like neither Al nor I, if you took us into a room and asked us to talk about our businesses, are going to revel in the things that really went right. We're going to talk about all the crucible moments, the little micro failures that we go through and we fail to succeed. I know that's true for him and it is for us. And so this first curiosity is, the rules are changing. The environment is going through a massive transformation. You're not quite sure how to, but you must be engaged and don't be idle. The second phase of this in active communication is really, look, your employees are nervous. Your stakeholders are nervous. There's uncertainty, in non-predictability, everyone. And in there is a voice, and you're not doing it alone. Hopefully over the years, you believe in this notion of leadership at all levels of the business. I'm telling you, Al from his ivory tower is not doing, he's distributed leadership to every element. And you really want to meet where rubber meets the road, meet one of his guys in a garage and how helpful they are when you can't find your car or the ticket machine's not working. And that never happens. But the bottom line is you feel the culture of what we say matches how we behave. And when that permeates through your entire organization, you really are a force of nature. And when is that force needed the most? During times of crisis. And where everyone, but they still need the leader. We have to continue to be a purveyor of this positive affirmations. And so one of the things that we have to do is to be the voice of engagement. And this is done in a very prescriptive way. We must be honest, contend with the brutal hard facts of the business, be forward thinking. That means don't go in and what are the alternatives we have? What are the things we can do? And it's all about optionality, about the things that are possible. And even when you're the only person in the room who believes it's possible, you got to keep that possibility alive. You have to temporarily suspend your disbelief in the impossible. And then it is engagement with partners, people who know your DNA, they know what you're about. And while all of these airport entities, many of them entrenched in defense, and then went legal to defend themselves for their contractual rights, or that was the wrong approach. The thing that saved us is we were there to help this airport survive an unpredictable storm that potentially had no end. And we were there. And when people relinquished their responsibilities, we picked it up, whether it was in our contractual obligation to do it or not. We threw the rule book out and we committed to we are going to do whatever it takes to help you. Now, granted, our survival and their survival were now co-engaged. We were going to help this airport get through this. And we did some incredible things. And I won't bore you with the stories, but in some cases, we had to fund our own capital investments because the airport's revenue didn't it. And so, we kind of lent money to the contract and said, don't worry, when this comes back, and we know it's going to come back, the aviation business is resilient. It will come back. People will travel again. When? Boy, we guessed that wrong. We thought, this could be a 12-month. It was a real 4-year cycle in the grand scheme of things before we returned back to sort of 2019 benchmark standards. Now, the industry is in a very healthy place. There's lots of turbulence again, but not like this. And so when you have to weather a storm, you now have this misery database you get to pull back from and draw from these experiences. But I want you to know there's a recipe here. And change equals opportunity for sure. Everyone kind of knows that, but radical change demands radical commitment to change. And this commitment piece cannot be underestimated. What do you need? Whatever you need, we're going to do it. And we're going to find a way to yes, safely, properly. And we just did. We just kept doing that when everyone else was, it's tough. And I don't say everyone, I think that's a misnomer. Some organizations just were paralyzed by the magnitude of the problem, and just were not prepared. And you don't prepare for these things the day they occur. Like much of Al's success was from 20, 40 years of investing in people and love and culture and kindness. And there is this inspirational, loving leadership that is true of all these conscious capitalism leaders I see, but they distribute it to everyone in the organization because it's not a one-man job ever. And the thing I kind of will just leave you with is don't be passive, be intensely curious, communicate everywhere. And what your people need the most of is honest, brutal, hard facts. Don't BS them. And then have a path forward, even if it's not fully baked, and many paths, and give people opportunities to engage in the decision-making process, and then certainly be part of the outcome. And you have to let your leaders live. And we believe that if it's just words on a wall, it doesn't mean anything. But we believe in our line level leaders, that they're the most important leaders in the business. And I know you know the story, Tim, and I won't elaborate it here, but right in the middle of COVID, I went to my board and I said, I want to meet with every single human being in our organization and meet them face to face for at least 5 minutes. And I want you to know half the room said, you are blank, blank crazy. And the other half of the room said, how are you going to do this safely? And before we got done, I did do it. And it took me 42 days. And I remember landing at JFK. I was the only aircraft that landed that day. And just to meet a handful of employees who were there every day in a place they were literally scared to be at because they thought they were going to get sick and die. And any event, My gift to you is there is a recipe. Prepare for it now. There's a lot we can learn from these lessons, and I know we've heard so much, recapping of COVID, but there's so much integrity lessons, and we can leave a legacy of growth, of goodness, of genuine human connection, and that's what we should be about.
Love it, Ben. Thank you. Al,
Wow.
go back
Can
to
I
you,
just
Al. Yeah,
can
sure.
I
Jump
just
in, Al.
say that, Ben, now we can all see why you're so successful and such a great leader. And thank you for those beautiful words. And I have to tell you, what you're talking about resonates so deeply with the Laz way and the Laz culture, because we say this all the time. And I think it's what you were saying. It's important to be curious and optimistic. And being curious and optimistic is really what opens our minds to the art of the possible. I run a weekly call in our company, calling it the art of the possible, and we have a bunch of people that are thinking out of the box and saying, "Well, wait a minute, we have close to 500 million square feet of parking space throughout the United States. What else can we do besides traditional parking?" And it's that thought leadership, provoking art of the possible, being curious and optimistic, that leads to just not staying in one box, and being versatile, and really creating opportunities. We love our mission is creating opportunities for our employees and value for our clients, but creating opportunities for our employees come first. And when you take care of your leaders and your employees, and we're all servant leaders here, and when you believe, and you mentioned this, the front line is the most important face of your company. It's not the CEO, it's not the name of the company, it's your frontline employees. And they were the heroes during COVID. Those were the people that were essential workers that risked their health and their lives to provide a service for others. One of the ways that Laz made it through is we converted hundreds of our locations to testing centers. We had that idea, and that was one of the ways we were able to keep people at work and help each community and do testing, drive-through testing, and converting all our locations. And they were on the forefront. And those ideas didn't come from the top, they came from the field. So when you all work together and know that you have a mission of helping each other and saving the company, great things happen. And we have a word that we've coined at Laz, which I think every company could use. It's called collaboration. Timothy, that's a new one because it just came up the other day, but I know you love collaboration. It's magical when you could bring people together. And I know that, all the people on this call are conscious leaders. And, I love being part of a tribe that is like-minded and like-hearted. And, just hearing from the great Ben Richter, we really do feel within our heart and soul, yeah, I get it, because I'm a conscious leader and I know exactly what he's talking about, and I know that we all practice it. We have to spread that love. And, I like the term leading with love that you use, Ben, because that's exactly what we need to do. And as ambassadors, each one of us as ambassadors for conscious capitalism can spread that love and lead with love and be an example for others of living a conscious way and being conscious leaders. So thank you, Ben, from the bottom of my heart. And it's just a great honor to be on this call with you, with everyone.
I love that.
I'm going to collaborate more.
I love that, because so often we have this discussion about why don't we use the word love at work? And we could have a whole episode about that, because I think it's so important, connecting the heart and the mind, right? This is all about connecting our heart and mind. It's conscious capitalism, right? It's the heart and it's the mind, and how we put those pieces together. So I
When
love that. So
business is going to be the force of goodness on the planet, how could you possibly do that without love in the equation?
yeah, love and caring. When are people at their best? When they feel cared for and they feel their work is meaningful. Now, having said that, I want to come back to this moment where you guys are leaders and you're leading your teams. In that first 30 days, when it started to become clear that something was brewing, that was very different. Practically, what did you do with your teams? What were some of the steps you took? Al, maybe begin that with, okay, what did we do? What did we actually do in those first 30 days?
Yeah, and it's funny, I'm sitting in my home office here, and this is the place that I sat at home because we weren't going to work 24/7. So this reminds me, I'm right back in the moment when you asked me that question. But as Ben said, communication is key. Like, are we call ourselves the OGs, the founders of LAZ. So the OGs have gone through turbulent times before, and we had some muscle memory. It wasn't quite like COVID, but we did have muscle memory. And I think the greatest experience for a young entrepreneur or people in business to go through is adversity. Both my parents happen to be Holocaust survivors. My dad survived by being in the woods. He lost his mother, two brothers, and a sister. And it's amazing that he came to this great country and became a rabbi and the greatest spiritual leader in our community. He'll be 95 and my mom will be 90 this June. And so I have that upbringing and feeling that anything's possible in life. You never, ever give up. And when we have a chance to bring our humanity to the moment, you do it. But what we did immediately was bring our teams together and organize that communication, those rhythm of meetings, and really just tried to figure out what we have to tackle first. And so we really I can't stress that enough. What Ben was saying, people are scared when you go through times like that, and you have to give them the confidence that we're together. We're in this together. Who are you in this foxhole with? People that, I love the idea of running into the fire instead of running away from the fire. So when you have a problem, Timothy, I'm flying down to see you and be with you because I need to help you. I need to be with you. You're my friend and I love you. Okay, so we figure out who our friends are in the time of need, and those are the people we want to be with and do business. And so I think that's the first mission, is bringing your team together and giving them one big hug and confidence that we're going to get through this. And we're going to go through ups and downs in business. COVID is just one blip, and hopefully it won't be as bad as COVID, but we have the opportunity to be going through a recession potentially. We have to think about that. We have to prepare with that. We notice that restaurant business is down 20%. People aren't flying as much right now. There is a concern out there, and we have to, spending will be lower. So we have to think about, okay, what are we going to do in this time of struggle? And I will tell you, the first thing we need to do is just hug each other and understand that we have a plan that we're going to get through this and all work together with great communication.
So I hear a couple things here, Al. One I hear is bring your team together, be clear-eyed about what's going on, and stick to your principles, stick to your values, stick to your mission and your purpose. And then from that, make sure you're communicating clearly to the organization about what's going on. And again, reiterating, we care and we're in this together. That kind
Absolutely.
of, we're in this together, and that relentless positivity, to borrow Ben's phrase, becomes really important in terms of how you're communicating. And you're credible because of the history of what you've done in the past, which I think is really critical. Both of you have stressed it wasn't like overnight that our stakeholders fell in love with us. This was after years of practice. So this is the competitive advantage that conscious businesses develop. And it takes time because your competitors can't replicate it overnight. Your competitors aren't in a position where they can suddenly pivot and say, oh, we suddenly love our stakeholders, right? How many airlines reacted with, oh, let's lay everybody off? Like how fast? GM's recent response, like, let's lay off 500 people right away because there may be tariffs coming, sends a really funky message to the organization versus the kind of approach you took. And Al, do you have a comment to make there?
Yeah, I was just going to say, our most important asset is the people we have working with us, right? Everyone knows you're only as good as the people you have working with you. That's your strength. And when you talk about stakeholders, taking care of your stakeholders, the first stakeholder group is your employees. When COVID happened for us, and we had to furlough 7,800 people, I wasn't worried as much as we didn't have debt, and was LAZ going to get through it? Yes, we would get through it. Hopefully, didn't know the extent of it. But what kept me up at night was, how are the people that work for LAZ, that live paycheck to paycheck, going to make it through? Like, how are they going to make it through? And we immediately stopped taking pay at the senior level. We put $1 million personally into an employee relief fund. And I went to Washington to lobby for the extra $600 a week in everyone's paycheck, which we had a little bit of influence on. And it made a huge difference for those people to be able to live. And that gave us comfort that they were at least going to be taken care of. And I think, as conscious leaders, we have to remember that we have to take care of all our stakeholders, our employees being first. And when you do that, it does come back to you tenfold. That loyalty is invaluable. I mean, when you give, you get, and I believe you get it back. When you give unconditionally and you have that love unconditionally, it comes back to you 10 times. And I've seen it in action for 45 years in business, and I know it works. And if I could just make one recommendation in leading with love and helping others, it's to give unconditionally, because it will come back to you.
Love it, Al. Heart and soul of conscious leadership and of conscious capitalism. Thank you for that. Ben, over to you. First 30 days. All this uncertainty, all of the lack of clarity, etc. What did you do in the first 30 days?
Yeah, first thing again, I'm going to make a little commentary around my friend Al. How many leaders will say, we are about to have an opportunity to go through a recession? Highlight the fundamental words that you use as a leader. And if everything you do is a have to, you're speaking the wrong language. It's a get to. We get to build businesses that can make a massive difference for the people that are in it, for the stakeholders who are engaged in it. We just need to be very cognizant of the language we use and the narratives we tell ourselves and the narratives we choose to publish. And I just kind of Hal had me at hello when he said, we have the opportunity to go through a recession together. God, I almost want to go there with him, let's just do this. It sounds like a great heartfelt time. And then secondarily, I do want you to know the first thing I did in the early stages, I told you, is I got on a plane and I got with our people and I gave them all a virtual hug. And I didn't know what to call it, but now I do. I collaborated with them. And we set up meetings, but we extracted in 42 days 1,620 some odd ideas of how to navigate COVID. And I want you to know, I didn't orchestrate the strategy that led us through this. They did. I just listened. And then I went back to a whole team of really smart people, and we broke these things apart into categories and themes and objectives, and they became goals. And now we had a plan. And we threw out the whole rule book. And where did I go to build the new one? Well, I went to our leaders. Do me a favor. Don't make it lip service. You're going to tell your people they're important, then leverage them. And if you do it on your own and then dictate how they're supposed to operate, that's not inclusion. That is not taking the words off the wall. That's kind of the old architecture of management and leadership. And it isn't, and the term that I want to publish isn't just loving leadership, it's inspirational loving leadership. It's building a message from everyone that matters to everyone. And it's hard work, but it's probably the most fulfilling thing you can do as a leader. And if you see a young person, man, woman, that does something they didn't think they could do, it's like the most fulfilling thing you can do in leadership. It's just, it fuels everyone's fire. And if you don't have this kind of level, and I hate to use the word, it's positive, but you have to be inclusive, and you got to give everyone a voice. And then you have to treat them like a leader. And trust me, it's easier said than done. So additionally, I would tell you is there's this fundamentally important thing we do after any time we execute something, and we do it from a single delivery run to an execution of a project to something that may not go the way we wanted to. When we have a problem or we have a process, it's this constant feedback loop, and we do something called after action reviews. And COVID was a giant after action review. And in order to maintain institutional knowledge to benefit us for the future, we must take all these lessons and capture them. And I think that's the gift you're giving the folks who are the listeners on today's podcast, and potentially, those who will see the message later, is, realize all of this great happenings and learnings from each other fall to the wayside if we can't convert it to institutional learning. And that's different from you as the leader. Just how do you proliferate the important messages, and how do we seed the kind of things? You know what? We may not be perfect in stakeholder engagement today, but we heard some great ideas. What do you think, and how could we do it? And let your team and your real line level leaders then develop a new, and make it a strategic thing. And 2 years from now, when you get to go through this great recession, you'll be prepared and ready for it to collaborate more effectively.
Yeah. So Ben, where's the opportunity for your team, and how is your team beginning to think right now about this as you prepare for a period of uncertainty, right? Like none of us know what's going to happen.
I
there's
want you to
some
know
signals, but we don't know.
It's not overconfidence, it's not overzealousness, but you do build. A dear friend of mine, a fellow amazing woman leader. I was coming up the Grand Canyon with my, at the time, 8-year-old son, and he had just reached the limit. I'm done, not taking one more step. And I gave him my best dad talk, and I really thought I had him there. And this young, dynamic, amazing leader said, "Let me give it a whirl." I'm like, "Good luck." And she said, "You're getting a chance to build your misery database." And I was like, "What the heck is that?" And he said, "There's going to become a time you and a bunch of buddies are going to see this hill out there that they want to climb, and they're all going to say, that may be a little bit too big. Let's crawl the little one." And you're going to be like, "No, no, 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 no. We got that." Why? Because you did this one, and this one's pretty big. And although you feel like you got nothing left, you never know how much more you got to give until you try to. And you're going to go back and you're going to say, "This was hard," but you're going to hit things in life, and you're going to be able to leverage this lesson. And it's just not going to, and you're going to not have this perplexing thing that stops you in your tracks, that keeps you from taking the next step. And I go, "That's not working." Sure enough, he gets up, walks up to the top, and he goes, "I built," and and I've seen this play out now in life where something comes up and it's like, that's no big deal. Look, we've been through COVID. I'm telling you, the next COVID-like thing, we're going to be much better. I think the things that we don't know is, there's a lot of turbulence and uncertainty and things that have never been done before. But we need to prepare our organizations for resiliency. And the way you do that is take these pillars make them matter, embed them with practical practices within the organization, and you will be resilient. But if you pay lip service to it, you don't really take heed because now's not the crisis. Well, I just need to lean into the misery database. It'll help you.
Well, Ben, one of the things that I've often observed within conscious capitalist businesses is, in a sense, ideas are free. You just have to
That's
ask
right.
for them. If you have the kind of culture of trust, of engagement, of psychological safety, you then turn to folks and say, help us, give us your ideas. Those ideas are free. And the currency here is trust and caring and connection. And it's a two-way street. In those times, those ideas are free. Ask, go to your front line, go to your people, ask, what are the opportunities here? What might we be able to do differently? What's the art of the possible, as you've said so beautifully, Al. Now, I want to pivot slightly here. And part of what I want to pivot slightly here is that, there's also, as a leader, how do you as a leader help prepare yourself to lead through this? Because, as they say on the plane, put your oxygen mask on first before you help others. So as a conscious leader, how did you help yourself? What were some of the practices or things that you did that helped you as a leader manage through this? And Ben, this time I'll start with you first on this one. What did you do? Well, how did you take care of Ben as a leader so you could be curious, relentlessly positive?
To me, I am blessed and grateful to have some practices that help me when I feel that your footing, your foundations are not right. And I tend to have this great genius network of people I've built that when my perspective seems cloudy or I'm unsure, and Tim, I want you to know you're in that circle of trust. And I reach out to people who have a different perspective and are not engaged in a way where when you're inside the snow globe, you can't see outside and they can see you in the snow globe, as an analogy. And that exists in your business forums. It exists in these artificial networks and groups and colleagues like Al and yourself. It also exists right there in family. And I'm not afraid to say to my wife and kids, what are you seeing? How do I, behave? And you have to understand that if you're not, a dear friend of mine likes to say, when I'm high on my soapbox of some major success, he will pull me aside and say, I need you to know there is no success in business that will ever account for a failure in the home. And I just want you to know when your foundation's not right there, it's tough to go out and be your best self. And so I was pretty nervous about a lot of things in COVID, and not really my personal health per se, but just where this was going, where society was going. We're making decisions around things. And I just didn't believe that humans were meant to live in isolation. I didn't like some of the things happening. It was affecting a little bit of my demeanor. And I got some right sizing or checks from my significant other who kind of called me out, and it was healthy. And then you got to go look in the mirror and make adjustments. But I needed to be there for this team, and I needed to find my solstice and be that consistent and positive influence. And to the best I could, I give myself a lot of grace for being human, but it was important, and I tried my hardest.
Al, how about you? How did you prepare and show up at your best? Because you want to show up at your best. This is when you're being tested. What were some of the things that you did to make sure that Al could stay in a positive, curious kind of place?
Well, first of all, I want to ask Ben, how old is your son now, Ben?
So he is, that son is now 16 years old
Okay.
and doing magnificent things.
I want to call him and tell him he's got the best dad in the whole world, because your heart is so big and so beautiful. So please send me his number, because I need to call him and give you a rave to him. Recognize your acts of value and excellence. But You're beautiful. Uh, you know, you know my story, Tim, and you know my parents are both survivors, and you know I believe anything's possible in life. So I have a certain strength of optimism because what we saw sometimes think are a big deal when you live as a child of a survivor and know what people went through, what we sort of, it gives you inspiration to believe that maybe what you think is a big deal isn't that big a deal. And I've been had the opportunity to have that strength from my family, from my parents, my mom and dad. But I agree exactly with what Ben said. You need the love around you with your family. You need your mentorship. You need mentors. You need people that believe in you more than you believe in yourself. Growing up in business, it wasn't a straight line for us. I got a $3,000 loan to get started. I thought I was worth all this money in my 20s, and I woke up in a real estate crash, and I was $8 million in the hole, signed personally at 29 years old. And people were advising us to go bankrupt, and we didn't. And we fought out, and it took us 7 years to pay off all our debt. And that adversity gained strength. And so, and along the way, I was lucky enough to have people be mentors. And that's why I believe in paying it forward. One of the greatest gifts you can do as a business leader or a human individual to friends or people in business, and I love mentoring entrepreneurs, is paying it forward, helping people. If you have some wisdom that you can impart, and I've been through that movie, I've seen that gives everybody confidence and optimism and strength. So relying on mentorship, relying on friends, relying on family. And I want to volunteer you that everyone on this call could call you, Tim, because you're one of the best advisors I know. So you should post your cell number.
I'm putting it in the chat now.
Yeah, thanks, guys. So one of the questions that's come up in the chat here is, oh, but you guys are big companies. You've got all this financial backing. You can manage this stuff. And what people forget is exactly what you alluded to, Al. We've been through a crisis where we were at the precipice. We were looking over into the dark possibility of the company going bankrupt. And Ben, I know that you've had your ups and downs. It hasn't always been a straight shot to the top. And as you go back and you're thinking about some of the smaller company CEOs on here who are now looking and saying, hey, financially, there are going to be some really challenging times coming our way. What do you tell them? What was some of the things, Ben, that you recall and you go back and you go,
Those challenges are your gifts. And I'm going to just make an analogy to parenting. There is a great book written by the author Ed Dees who talks about the business cycle. And he has all of these references to, adolescence and early child mortalities. And, these are all just things that they're natural occurrences that happen in the cycle. The interesting thing is today on this call, you have two cradle to grave entrepreneurs who have learned how to rub two pennies together and try to make a third. And along the way, Conscious Capitalism, my first business thrift, had not yet been introduced. And I felt there was something missing in my heart about what what entrepreneurship was all about. And once I got the bug, I think I just drank too much of this, conscious capitalism Kool-Aid, because I became an evangelist. And, in the early stages of its engagement as a movement, and it changed the way and the purpose by which I was leading. And purpose became the ultimate conduit of why I was doing it. It made challenges not feel like they weren't meant for me and for the organization. Every single challenge, every single problem, it was Al's sentiment. There's an opportunity to go through a recession. There's an opportunity to find a way not to pay this because I've got to make payroll this week. It was they were meant for you. And with each iteration, you successfully build this resiliency, this grit to handle more and more adversity. And unfortunately, it's part of what you're signing up for as an entrepreneur. So in your glossy, brochure, when you were signing up to, go want to do whether it's a startup or early engagement or create something, just understand, read the fine line. It's part of the job description, and you've got to kind of take that on as not as a burden, because you don't have to do any of this. You get
Yeah.
to.
Yeah.
And if you don't change that reference, the lens by which you see things happen, then unfortunately, entrepreneurship can be a miserable vocation.
So what I hear from that, Ben, is a couple things. One is, stay true to your purpose. That's got to be your guiding North Star as you go through this. But there's also something a little more subtle about I think both of you have said. I will often say, or we will often say, that conscious capitalism isn't an excuse for not having a good business strategy and a good business model. And what I think is one of the foundational pillars underneath our four tenets is this ability to have an agile, adaptive business model. And the fact that you have this culture, the fact that you have this stakeholder orientation, the fact that you have the purpose and you have the leaders enables you to have a more agile, adaptive business model, because you've built up this trust and you're engaging everybody in doing it. And so I want to bring that back and sort of say, yeah, there's this beautiful stuff over here. And it enables you as a business to be much more agile, adaptive, and innovative than you otherwise might have been. And that comes back to a very practical issue around what is our business model and how do we adjust that and manage that? How do we get to innovate and manage that during a recession or during COVID? Al, back over to you to sort of say a little bit about, when you think about some of the near-death experiences and the financial side of the business, you weren't always a big one. You were small. You had the near-death experience. You came out on the other side. What were one or two things you learned during that experience?
Well, I completely agree with what Ben said. I think to quote, it was those challenges are your gifts, right? And so how do we build resiliency? How do we gain strength? There were times early on where, and I would love to ask people on this chat how many people have experienced this in business, where you said, well, I don't know how I'm going to make payroll. Forget about how big you are today. I don't know if I'm going to make payroll next week. What does that put your mindset into? You're up against it and you have to find a way to make it work. That's what I love about entrepreneurship. These people on this call are leaders that have found ways to make it through. They're conscious leaders, but they're also amazing business people. And, having the ability, I love what you said, to be agile, adaptive, and innovative is a part of business. And using the tenets of conscious capitalism to get there is a beautiful thing, which is going to make you more successful. But, I would say that, I think you have to believe in yourself and you have to take on those challenges as an opportunity, and you're going to figure it out. Once you jump in that deep end of the water, you're going to swim. You're going to find a way to swim. And I know that if, using your friends, like you said earlier, Timothy, there are people that if you ask them, I know if I called Ben up for advice, he's going to be there for me. And by the way, it's not because we grew up together and we're best friends, because we're like-minded and like-hearted, and he's a caring soul. And if you could find people like Ben in your life, that's the gift of business. That's the gift of life. And we all have to, that's what we have in our community. That's what I love about conscious capitalism.
Well, Ben, You guys are inspirational leaders. You've built great businesses and you're continuing to evolve and grow those businesses in new ways. And for that, eternally grateful for your support for the movement and for the exemplars that you are. Thank you so much for joining us this morning or this afternoon if you're over in
You're
Europe. Thank you.
you're so welcome. And I'm going to steal 30 seconds. And I just want to
Okay.
respond back to Al. Al, you forced me to remember probably the greatest gift given to me by my mentors and folks who have saw something in me maybe I didn't see myself. And they encouraged me that if you don't solve the little failures with a sense of gratitude, you will be defined by the big colossal failures. And then they said, I am giving you this gift of knowledge for one reason. Play it forward and continue to lift where you stand. And the message I just want to leave to everyone is wherever you are, whatever you're doing, you have the ability to touch someone in a positive, uplifting way and to move the needle forward. And if we do this collectively as a movement, we are unstoppable together. And I so appreciate, Al, the ability to call you friend.
Love you.
Well,
Love everyone.
thank you so much, you two.
Thank you.
And I have a note to remind everybody that next week we have another virtual gathering with two other exemplars, John Mackey, co-founder and former CEO of Whole Foods, and Paul Rice, the founder of the Fair Trade USA movement. Both those two will be here talking about how conscious consumerism is increasing and driving more of this kind of success for businesses that are appealing to conscious consumers because they are purpose-driven and they are conscious businesses. So thank you everyone for attending. Really appreciate it. And we will see some of you next week. And Al and Ben, again, a big heartfelt thank you on behalf of our movement for both who you are and what you've done today. So thank you all and best wishes to everybody. And thanks for joining us.
Thanks so
You're
much.
quite welcome.
Thanks,
Bye for now.
everyone.